I'm Rick Hart. This is your APTN News Brief for Tuesday, March 5th. We begin in Vancouver, a city long known for its chronic housing challenges, a situation that, if nothing is done, could only get worse, according to a recent report by a housing advocacy group. Tina House reports.
There's some blankets, food, utensils for eating, items for cooking on.
We met Mark a few months back when police and city workers moved into Oppenheimer Park to remove people who are what the city calls illegally camping. But for those that have nowhere else to go, they call this park home. At the time, they only had him remove his tent during the day. Mark Menard is a trained and experienced heavy equipment operator, but has found it challenging to find an affordable place to rent in Vancouver. He also says that he hasn't been able to find work either because he constantly has to watch his belongings from getting stolen or thrown away by city officials. And just recently, that's exactly what city workers did.
It got to the point where they just kept taking my stuff. And then it got to the point now when they came the last time, they took my bins and everything in them, my tarps, my tent, my blankets, my clothing, my food. I was left with one bag and a backpack, and that's it.
And with Vancouver now deemed the most expensive city to live in Canada, how are those on low income and facing multiple barriers able to afford to live here? The Carnegie Housing Project says houselessness could jump by 50% by 2030 if swift action isn't taken immediately.
Stopping the loss of modular housing by either finding new sites or extending the leases on the current sites in the city, so we're not actually losing housing as we desperately need it. Stopping the loss of SROs to rents by implementing vacancy control in SROs, changing the definition of social housing to one that actually includes shelter rate, which is people that need the housing the most.
The city has 860 units of modular housing. 144 of them are boarded up in the middle of a housing crisis. The ones behind us, 39 more, we don't know where they're going to go, but those people are being evicted now. So the city needs to find sites for all of the modular housing.
And with these modular housing sites originally temporarily set up on city-owned lots that weren't in development at the time, Swanson and other advocates say action needs to be taken immediately. The City of Vancouver provided the following statement. There are no new temporary modular housing sites underway. The TMH program was always intended to be temporary as the city prioritizes permanent housing solutions. The original license terms vary by location. When a lease of a city site approaches expiry and the license cannot be extended due to pending redevelopment or the site or bylaw limitations, BC Housing and the operator work together to relocate residents to other affordable supportive homes. However, Devin O'Leary says, despite the assurances from the city, he says things aren't moving ahead in his opinion.
Things have been made invisible, I would say. The harm is definitely higher. It's always stressful for people that are being displaced. There hasn't been any sort of indication of more housing and any care really for that. So yeah, it hasn't gotten any better.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
He's known as Freddie the Flyer, and Canada's first Indigenous commercial pilot from the Arctic has made quite a name for himself over the years. Now, Freddie Carmichael has a children's book under his wing, a book that, as Carly Schogner tells us, has attracted some high-profile attention.
Since there's a lot of ice and snow that can block up the roads, you need planes to get to places.
Cooper Lenny is an elementary school student in Inuvik. He's interested in airplanes and people who fly them, especially Freddie the Flyer Carmichael, the first Indigenous commercial pilot in the Arctic. Cooper and others are featuring Freddie in Wisdom Fest, showcasing kids' interests.
When we heard the plane flying by, I wonder how fast it was going.
Freddie and his planes are known across the Mackenzie Delta, from the airport in his hometown Aklavik to Inuvik on murals, and one of his planes can be seen as you drive into town. Freddie lives near Inuvik. He'll be 89 in May. Park Gwitchin. Freddie grew up in the bush and in Aklavik. With little education, he earned his pilot's license in 1955 when he was 20. He went on to establish a few businesses of his own, including a flying service to help manage caribou herds.
If you're interested in an airplane, then you're trying your best to find some money and some people that will help you, you know.
Freddie's wife, Mickey, has been with him along this journey.
Fred was written up in Time magazine, the same one with the man on the moon back in July 1969. How cool is that?
Over the decades, Freddie has been awarded the Order of Canada and is part of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame. He also has an honorary Doctor of Laws from the University of Saskatchewan. Published in October, a Canadian author and an Inuvialuit artist originally from the Arctic region partnered with Freddie in creating a children's book, which includes both Gwich'in and Inuvialuitan languages.
This is the Dolly Parton. We just got it yesterday.
Most recently, the book has been added to the list of country singer Dolly Parton's charity, Dolly Parton Imagination Library, which gives books to kids up to 5 years old. Some 53,000 children from over 400 communities across Canada are part of this program.
Freddie found school hard in the big city, but he loved flying more than anything, and his teachers helped him.
He became a wizard at reading the weather and fantastic at fixing things. He earned his pilot's license and flew home in his very own plane. Now that is just so cool, especially back in those days, right?
That's Bobby Jo Greenland Morgan. She was at the Inuvik October book launch, packed with people standing up to share stories of how Freddie helped them across the communities.
I say that growing up in Aklavik, we're very proud of Freddie and many others of his age generation who were trailblazers in many ways. They were an inspiration to us.
Van an Gwijijitsik. I read this one where it talks about how Freddie waves his wings at people in their bush camps below as they fished and gathered berries, always keeping an eye out in case someone needed help. He was true to his roots and who he was and how he was raised and values of caring for others. The different people across the Mackenzie Delta that he's helped, that he's rescued, that he's helped in some way as a pilot, traveling and flying in weather and circumstances that most pilots would refuse to do.
Freddie the Flyer will be distributed in July to homes across Canada through the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. Families can sign up for free online or at regional libraries or daycare centers. Carly Schogner, APTN National News, Inuvik.
And finally, fans of the recently released Marvel miniseries Echo will recognize her as Taloa, a role that served as the acting debut for Winnipeg-based Katarina Zervogel, a member of Saugeen First Nation. APTN's Sav Jonza met up with Zervogel to discuss her success and dreams for the future.
Katarina Zervogel is becoming well known as the actor who played Taloa, the deaf mother of the title character in the Marvel miniseries Echo. Deaf and Indigenous representation are at the heart of the show. Through an ASL interpreter, Zervogel spoke with APTN about her experience in the entertainment industry so far.
Just making sure that the needs and the accommodations are heard and what people need for that. Like, even thinking about when I was working on the set for Echo, they had lights in my dressing room, so somebody would hit a doorbell, but it would flash a light so I would know somebody was coming in. So I think actually they gave a great example of providing accessibility. Even the cast and the crew all learned some sign language.
Zervogel is Mohawk, Ojibwe, and German, and is a member of Saugeen First Nation in Manitoba. She says at first she was quite nervous about being on such a big production.
But once I got there, I saw so much of the crew being Indigenous, deaf crew as well, and just how they were able to create a sense of a welcoming, feeling. I felt included. That really helped to alleviate a lot of those apprehensions because I am part of both of those communities.
Zervogel holds many talents in the industry. Aside from acting, she also co-wrote her first feature film, Finality of Dusk, which came out last year. It focuses on a post-apocalyptic world with a deaf antagonist. She says she hopes to work in a writer's room in the future.
I'd love to do a TV show. I love to write anything, really. Graphic novels, I'd love to do books, I'd love anything, any type of media. I love the sci-fi genre. It's one of my favorites.
Ziervogel attributes her interest in the film and television industry to her mother and stepfather. They also work in the industry and showed Ziervogel the power of Indigenous representation. Though being deaf and Indigenous are important parts of Ziervogel's identity, she says she is more than just that.
The fact that I'm a big sci-fi nerd. I love to play video games. I love reading. I love being in nature, going camping, and that's a huge part of who I am too.
Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And that's your APTN News Brief for Tuesday, March 5th. I'm Rick Harp.